He was about to sign the divorce papers and marry his new fiancée, when she walked in holding 3 identical newborns. His face, his eyes, his blood. The babies he never knew existed. His family had torn them apart when she was pregnant. And now, those 3 children possessed abilities that could destroy his empire, or save it. He built his kingdom on fear. But when he looked into their eyes, the most dangerous man in the underworld felt something he'd never known. Terror. Not of enemies, of losing them again. This is the story of the crime lord who had everything, until the family he abandoned came back to claim him. The office smelled like expensive leather and old decisions. Dante Kim didn't need windows to know what lay beyond these walls. A city that whispered his name in fear, an empire built on silence and disappeared men, a throne made of other people's nightmares. At 32, he had stopped counting the lives he'd destroyed. It was easier that way. Cleaner. His fiancée, Victoria, stood beside him in a dress that cost more than most people earned in a year. Perfect posture, perfect smile. Perfectly chosen by his family to continue the bloodline, to strengthen alliances, to be exactly what a crime lord's wife should be. Beautiful, obedient, and utterly unaware of the blood on his hands. She didn't love him. He didn't love her. That wasn't the point. The lawyer shuffled papers across the mahogany desk, his hands trembling slightly. Everyone trembled around Dante. It was natural. Expected. He'd built his reputation on making men shake without ever raising his voice. "The divorce should be finalized within minutes, Mr. Kim," the lawyer said, not meeting his eyes. "Once your ex-wife signs, you'll be free to proceed with the new union." Free. The word tasted bitter. 3 years ago, he'd been forced to choose his family's empire or the woman who'd made him feel human. His father had made it clear. Yara had no place in their world. She was African, an outsider, someone who'd make the organization look weak. So Dante had done what heirs to criminal empires do. He'd chosen power over love. He'd signed the papers his father put in front of him, watched her pack her things, and never looked back. It was supposed to be easy, a clean break. Move forward. Forget. But some ghosts don't stay buried. The door opened, and everything stopped. Yara stood in the doorway, and Dante forgot how to breathe. She looked different, stronger. Her natural hair framed her face in a crown of defiant beauty, her dark skin glowing despite the exhaustion etched around her eyes. She wore simple clothes, no jewelry, nothing that screamed wealth or status. And somehow she made Victoria's designer dress look like a costume. But it wasn't Yara that made his heart stop. It was what she carried. 3 infant car seats, 3 identical babies, 3 pairs of eyes that looked exactly like his own. The room tilted. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand flew to her mouth. The lawyer dropped his pen. Dante's bodyguards, trained to react to any threat, stood frozen. Because what do you do when the danger isn't a gun or a rival family, but 3 tiny humans who share your boss's face? Yara walked forward, her steps steady, despite carrying the weight of 3 lives. She set the car seats down on the desk, right on top of the divorce papers. The babies stirred, small fists curling and uncurling, oblivious to the empire crumbling around them. "Hello, Dante," she said quietly. Her voice was different too. Harder, like she'd learned to survive in a world that had tried to erase her. "I believe you're missing something." He couldn't move, couldn't speak. His entire existence had just been rewritten in the span of a heartbeat. What is this?" Victoria finally managed, her voice sharp with panic. Yara didn't even look at her. Her eyes stayed locked on Dante's, unwavering. "These are your children. Conceived before your family tore us apart. Born 3 months ago, alone, because I didn't know where you were, because I thought you'd made your choice. 3 months. She'd been carrying them when he'd signed those papers. When his father had told him she was gone, disappeared, moved on. When he'd forced himself to believe the lie that it was better this way." Dante finally found his voice. It came out broken. You were pregnant? Triplets, she said softly. 2 boys, 1 girl. They have your eyes, Dante. And they have other things too. As if on cue, one of the babies, the girl, opened her eyes. They were storm gray, identical to Dante's. But in their depths, something flickered. Something impossible. The lights in the office dimmed for just a second, then returned to normal. The lawyer backed away from the desk. Victoria gasped. Dante leaned forward, his world narrowing to those 3 small faces. What are you saying? Yara's expression softened, just a fraction. Your family's bloodline carries more than just power and influence, Dante. You know that. Your grandfather could read people's intentions. Your uncle could manipulate probability. Gifts that skip generations, that hide in the shadows of your empire. She touched the girl's tiny hand. She can affect electrical currents. The boys. I'm still learning. But they're special. And they're yours. 3 children. His children. With abilities that could make them targets. Or weapons. The crime lord who'd built an empire on control felt everything slip through his fingers. Victoria's voice cut through the silence, ice cold. This is insane. Dante, you can't possibly believe. Get out, he said quietly. She blinked. What? Get out. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The air in the room grew heavy with the weight of his authority. You, the lawyer, everyone, leave now. They scattered like leaves in a storm. Even his bodyguards knew better than to argue when he used that tone. Within seconds, it was just him and Yara, and 3 sleeping miracles. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the soft breathing of the babies. Why now? Dante finally asked. Why come back? Yara's jaw tightened. Because they're starting to show signs. Because I can't protect them alone. Because whether you want it or not, they're part of your world now. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked. And because I thought you deserved to know, even after everything. He reached out slowly, carefully, as if the babies might disappear if he moved too fast. His hand hovered over the girl's head, trembling in a way his hands never trembled when holding a gun. What are their names? I didn't name them, Yara whispered. I was waiting, hoping, that somehow we'd do it together. 3 unnamed children, 3 impossible futures. 3 reasons to burn his entire empire to the ground if it meant keeping them safe. Dante Kim, the man who'd never been afraid of anything, looked at his ex-wife and his children and felt something crack open in his chest. Something that had been locked away for 3 years. Something that felt dangerously like hope. We need to talk, he said. About everything. Yara nodded, exhaustion and relief warring in her eyes. Yes, we do. Outside, the city continued its rhythm, unaware that the balance of power had just shifted, unaware that the crime lord's greatest weakness had just walked through his door. And in the underworld, weakness was a death sentence. But as Dante looked at those 3 small faces, he realized something terrifying. He'd burn his entire kingdom before he let anything happen to them. The divorce papers lay forgotten beneath the car seats, unsigned, unwanted, already irrelevant. The penthouse apartment had never felt like home to Dante. It was a fortress, a statement, a place where business happened, and enemies were reminded of their place. Bulletproof glass, panic rooms, security systems that could track a threat 6 blocks away. Now it held 3 car seats, 3 babies, and 1 woman who'd turned his carefully constructed world into ruins. Yara stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the city lights flicker below. She hadn't said much during the drive over, protected by his security convoy, the babies sleeping peacefully despite the storm brewing around them. Dante had sent word to his family, meeting postponed, emergency. No one questioned him. They wouldn't dare. But they would ask. Soon. And he needed answers before then. Tell me everything, he said, setting down 2 glasses of water. She took one without looking at him. Where do you want me to start? Her voice was steady, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. The moment your father told me I'd never be good enough for his son? Or the moment I realized I was pregnant and you were already gone? The words hit like bullets. Precise. Painful. I didn't know, Dante said quietly, about any of it. My father told me you'd left, that you'd decided our worlds were too different. You thought I abandoned you. Yara turned and her eyes held something sharp. You signed the papers, Dante. You chose your empire over us. I didn't leave. I was erased. He'd known his father was ruthless. He'd seen it firsthand, the way enemies disappeared, the way inconvenient truths became lies. But he'd never thought. How? The question came out hoarse. Yara set down her glass with careful control. Money. Threats. I don't know all of it. One day I was your wife. The next I was informed my visa had been revoked, my bank accounts frozen, my apartment lease terminated. I had 72 hours to leave the country or face deportation. Her laugh was bitter. Your father was very thorough. Dante's hands curled into fists. His father. The man who'd built their empire, who'd taught him that emotion was weakness, that family meant bloodline and power, nothing more. The man who'd erased the woman Dante loved like she'd never existed. I didn't go back to Africa, Yara continued. I couldn't. I found a small community, people who helped me hide, who didn't ask questions. And then I found out I was pregnant. She glanced toward the nursery area his staff had frantically set up. Triplets, high-risk pregnancy, no insurance, no resources. I survived because I had to. Every word was a knife. And when they were born, Dante asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. Chaos, Yara said simply. The girl. She short-circuited every monitor in the delivery room the second she took her first breath. The hospital thought it was a power surge. I knew better. She moved to the car seats, adjusting a blanket with tender precision. The boys are quieter. But I've seen things. Objects moving. Temperatures shifting. They're too young to control it. Too young to understand. Dante approached slowly, looking down at the 3 sleeping children. His children. They were so small. Fragile. Perfect. And carrying gifts that could make them targets for every rival family, every government agency, every monster who wanted to weaponize power. My grandfather's ability was subtle, he said. Reading intentions, useful in negotiations, in avoiding betrayals. My uncle's gift with probability made him unbeatable at high-stakes games. They learned to hide it, to use it carefully. He crouched beside the car seats. If other families find out, they'll try to take them, Yara finished. Or kill them. I know. Why do you think I came back? I can't protect them alone, Dante. I can't give them what they need to survive in your world. Her voice broke, just slightly. But I won't let them be weapons either. I won't let your family turn them into tools for empire building. He looked up at her, seeing the warrior she'd become. 3 years ago, she'd been warm, open, full of light. Now that light had been forged into steel, and it was beautiful, terrifying, necessary. What do you want? He asked. I want them safe, Yara said immediately. I want them to have a choice. She stopped, closing her eyes. I want them to know their father. Not the crime lord. Not the heir. Dante. The man who used to read poetry at midnight and cook terrible pancakes and laugh like the world wasn't crushing him. He hadn't thought about that version of himself in years. The man he'd been with her. In those stolen moments when he could pretend he was normal, that his hands weren't stained with blood and buried bodies. That man doesn't exist anymore, Dante said quietly. Then maybe it's time to remember him. Yara knelt beside him, close enough that he could smell her familiar scent, vanilla and strength. For them, if not for yourself. One of the boys stirred, making a small sound. Instinctively, Dante reached out, his large hand hovering over the tiny chest. The baby's breathing evened out. Something warm spread through Dante's chest, unfamiliar and overwhelming. I'll protect them, he said. Whatever it takes. But your family tried to erase me once. Yara's hand covered his, firm and unyielding. If they try again, I'll burn everything down. I've survived too much to lose them now. He believed her. This wasn't the woman who'd been forced to leave. This was a mother, a protector. Someone who'd walked through hell and come out forged in fire. We'll do this together, Dante said. But it means you're back in my world. The danger, the targets, all of it. I never left your world, Yara said softly. I just learned to survive it differently. The baby girl's eyes opened again, storm gray and ancient. The lights flickered. Dante didn't flinch. Instead, he touched her small hand, and she gripped his finger with surprising strength. Does she have a name you're considering? He asked. Yara smiled, the first real smile he'd seen since she'd walked back into his life. I thought. Zara. It means princess in some cultures, star in others. Zara, Dante repeated, testing the sound. The baby's eyes tracked him, unnervingly aware. And the boys? I was hoping you'd have ideas. They spent the next hour talking softly, suggesting names, watching the triplets sleep, building something fragile and new between them. Outside, the Empire waited. His father's questions, Victoria's fury, the rivals who would smell weakness. But in this moment, in the quiet of his fortress, Dante Kim allowed himself something he'd denied for 3 years. The possibility of something more than power. The terrifying, beautiful chance of being a father. And when his phone buzzed with his father's name on the screen, he didn't answer. For the first time in his life, he chose something else. Someone else. Them. The summons came at dawn. Dante had expected it. His father didn't tolerate delays or unanswered questions. Canceling the wedding without explanation, ghosting calls, sending Victoria home in tears. These were acts of rebellion. And in the Kim family, rebellion was crushed swiftly. He left Yara and the triplets in the penthouse, surrounded by his most trusted guards. She'd insisted she didn't need protection. He'd insisted she was wrong. They'd compromised. She'd accept the security, and he'd stop treating her like she was fragile. She was anything but. The family estate sat on 20 acres outside the city, a monument to old money and older violence. Dante had grown up in these walls, learned to shoot in the underground range, watched his father conduct business in the soundproof study. Beautiful on the outside, monstrous within. His father waited in that same study, seated behind a desk carved from a single piece of mahogany. 65 years old, silver-haired, still radiating the kind of power that made grown men weep. Behind him stood Dante's uncle and 2 cousins, all watching with varying degrees of curiosity and contempt. Sit, his father said. Not a request. Dante remained standing. I'll make this quick. You embarrassed this family yesterday, his father continued, as if Dante hadn't spoken. Victoria's father is threatening to pull his support from the East Coast operations. The Italians are asking questions. And you, his voice turned to ice, you canceled your wedding for a woman we removed from your life 3 years ago. You didn't remove her from my life, Dante said quietly. You threatened her, froze her assets, and had her deported. There's a difference. His uncle stepped forward. Watch your tone, nephew. Dante's gaze didn't waver from his father. She was pregnant, with triplets. You sent away my children. The room went silent. His father's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation. That's impossible. We monitored her. There was no indication. Because she disappeared, Dante interrupted. Because she survived despite everything you threw at her. And now those children are back. My children. Your grandchildren. He leaned forward, hands on the desk. And they have gifts. That got a reaction. His father's eyes sharpened. His uncle exchanged glances with the cousins. In their world, abilities meant leverage, power, advantage. What kind of gifts? His father asked carefully. The kind that skip generations. The kind you've always valued. Dante straightened. The girl can manipulate electricity. The boys are still developing. They're 3 months old, and already they're showing signs. His father stood slowly, a predator recognizing opportunity. Bring them here. We'll assess their potential, train them properly. No. The word landed like a gunshot. Excuse me? His father's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. They're not weapons, Dante said. They're not tools for your empire. They're children, my children, and I'm going to raise them far away from this. His uncle laughed, harsh and mocking. You think you can just walk away? You're the heir, Dante. You don't get to choose love over duty. I already did once, Dante said, and I lost everything that mattered. I'm not making that mistake again. His father moved around the desk, slow and deliberate. You're being emotional, weak. That woman has poisoned your mind again. That woman is the mother of my children. Show her respect. Respect? His father's hand shot out, gripping Dante's jaw with surprising strength. I built this empire with blood and sacrifice. I gave you everything. And you repay me by choosing some outsider and her bastards over family legacy. Dante didn't pull away. His voice stayed level, cold. Those bastards carry your bloodline. They have your grandfather's gifts running through their veins. They're more family than anyone in this room. Then they belong to this family, his father hissed. Not to her. We'll take custody, raise them properly. Touch them, and I'll destroy everything you've built. The threat hung in the air, crystal clear. His father released him, eyes narrowing. You don't have that kind of power, son. Don't I? Dante smiled, and it wasn't kind. I know where every body is buried. Every dirty deal. Every politician on payroll. Every offshore account. You taught me to be thorough, father. I've been documenting everything since I was 16. Insurance, you called it. He adjusted his cuff. If anything happens to Yara or my children, every piece of evidence goes to the FBI, the IRS, and our biggest rivals. This empire burns, and you go to prison. His cousins shifted nervously. His uncle's hand moved toward his jacket, toward his gun, but stopped when Dante's gaze flicked to him. You won't shoot me, Dante said calmly. Because you need me. Because without me, this organization falls apart. And because... He stepped closer to his father. Despite everything, you still care about legacy, about bloodline. Those children are your legacy now. Pure kin blood with extraordinary gifts. You can have them as allies, protected and raised properly. Or you can have nothing. His father's jaw worked silently. Years of control, of absolute authority, challenged by the son he'd groomed to be exactly like him. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. What are you proposing? His father finally asked. I'll stay involved in the business. But I live separately with Yara and the children. No interference, no custody battles, no threats. When the triplets are older, if they choose to be part of this world, that's their decision, not yours, not mine. Dante's voice softened, just slightly. You get to be a grandfather, father. Actually be part of their lives. Or you can be the man who tried to weaponize them. Choose. The study fell silent, except for the tick of an ancient clock. His father stared at him, searching for weakness, for an angle to exploit. Finding none. And Victoria? His uncle asked. That arrangement is over. Find another alliance. His father turned away, looking out the window at the manicured grounds. When he spoke again, his voice was tired. Old. You're willing to risk everything for them. Yes, Dante said simply. Everything. A long pause. Then, you have 1 month. Prove to me those children are worth protecting. That this isn't just infatuation clouding your judgment. His father's reflection stared back from the window. 1 month, Dante. Then we revisit this conversation. It wasn't acceptance, but it was time. Space to breathe. To plan. Understood, Dante said, and left before anyone could change their mind. As he walked through the estate's halls, past portraits of stern ancestors and display cases of family heirlooms, Dante felt something shift inside him. He'd stood up to his father, threatened the empire, chosen love over legacy, and he'd survived. His phone buzzed. A photo from Yara. The triplets awake, their storm-gray eyes staring at the camera. The girl's tiny hand was gripping what looked like a TV remote, and the screen behind her flickered with static. Below the image, she's trying to change channels. Send help. Dante smiled. Really smiled. For the first time in years. He texted back. On my way. Don't let her discover the security system. He had 1 month to prove his children were worth protecting. 1 month to build a life outside the Empire's shadow. 1 month to become the man Yara believed he could be. It wouldn't be easy. His father's mercy had limits. The organization had long memories. And somewhere out there, enemies were already calculating how 3 gifted children could be leverage against the Kim family. But as Dante drove back toward his penthouse, toward his family, he realized something profound. For the first time in his adult life, he had something worth fighting for beyond power. He had a reason to become more than the crime lord they'd molded him to be. He had 3. The penthouse transformed over the following weeks. What had once been a cold monument to wealth became something else entirely. Baby bottles cluttered the marble countertops, soft blankets draped over leather furniture. Toys, carefully selected, age-appropriate, ridiculously expensive, scattered across floors that used to echo with the footsteps of dangerous men conducting darker business. Dante Kim, the crime lord who'd built an empire on fear, now spent his nights pacing the hallway at 3 a.m., holding a crying infant against his chest, humming songs he didn't remember learning. Fatherhood, he discovered, was harder than negotiating with rival families. You're doing it wrong, Yara said from the nursery doorway, exhaustion making her voice soft. She wore one of his old shirts, her hair wrapped in a silk scarf, looking more beautiful than anyone had a right to look on 2 hours of sleep. Dante adjusted his hold on Zara, who continued to wail despite his best efforts. She's fed. Changed, not tired. What am I missing? She can sense your stress. Yara crossed the room, taking their daughter gently. The moment Zara settled against her mother's chest, the crying stopped. The lights in the room, which had been flickering in time with the baby's distress, stabilized. Your heart's racing. She feels it, amplifies it. My heart rate is normal, Dante protested. Yara raised an eyebrow. You're worried about the meeting tomorrow with the accountants. About whether your father will keep his word. About the security footage that showed someone watching the building last night. She swayed gently, Zara's small hand gripping her finger. You think I can't read you anymore? He'd forgotten how perceptive she was. How she'd always seen through his carefully constructed walls. The footage was inconclusive, he said quietly. Could be nothing. Or it could be someone calculating whether 3 gifted children are worth kidnapping. Yara's voice didn't rise, but steel ran through it. I'm not naive, Dante. I know what we're facing. But if you walk around like a loaded weapon, she'll absorb that fear. They all will. She was right. The boys, sleeping peacefully in their cribs, seemed calmer when the room was calm, more restless when tension filled the air. They were mirrors, reflecting the emotional landscape around them. How do you do it? Dante asked. Stay calm when everything's a threat? Yara looked at him for a long moment, then gestured toward the sitting area. They settled onto the couch together, Zara dozing between them, her small chest rising and falling with perfect trust. I spent 3 years learning to survive, Yara said softly. Learning that panic doesn't protect them. That fear is just another prison. She touched Zara's dark curls. When I was alone, pregnant, terrified, I had 2 choices, break or become something harder. I chose harder. But I also chose to keep the softness where it mattered. With them. They deserve a mother who isn't afraid to love them completely. Dante watched his daughter sleep, this impossible small person who could short-circuit electrical grids with her emotions. I don't know how to be soft, he admitted. Everything I was taught was about survival in your world, Yara interrupted gently. But this is different. They need you present, Dante. Not the crime lord, not the heir. Just you. The man who used to make me laugh, who cried at that ridiculous documentary about penguins, who dreamed about something beyond violence. That documentary was emotionally manipulative, Dante muttered, but his lips quirked slightly. You sobbed for 20 minutes. The baby penguins were abandoned by their parents. It was tragic. Yara laughed quietly, and the sound filled something hollow in his chest. There he is, she said. That's the man they need to know. One of the boys, they'd named him Marcus, stirred in his crib. Dante rose automatically, moving to check on him. The baby's eyes opened, storm gray and ancient, tracking his father's movements. Then, impossibly, a small toy rattle on the nearby table shifted 3 inches to the left. Dante froze. Did he just... Telekinesis, Yara confirmed, joining him. Small objects only. Started last week. The other boy, Elijah, he affects temperature. Made his bottle ice cold yesterday when he was angry about waiting. 3 months old. 3 impossible gifts. 3 children who would either change the world or be destroyed by people who wanted to control them. We need to document this, Dante said, his mind already moving to logistics. Understand their abilities. Learn to help them control. We need to let them be babies first, Yara corrected firmly. They'll learn control when they're ready. Right now, they just need love, safety, and parents who aren't treating them like experiments. It was a rebuke, gentle but clear. Dante nodded slowly, forcing himself to step back from the tactical planning his mind always defaulted to. You're right. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just be here, with us. In this moment, Yara took his hand, pulling him back to the couch. Tell me something that has nothing to do with security, or your family, or threats. Dante struggled for a moment, his brain cataloging dangers, contingencies, escape routes. Then he forced himself to look at her. Really look. At the woman who'd survived being erased, who'd brought his children back to him, who was trying to build something real in the ruins of what they'd lost. I kept your coffee mug, he said quietly. The ugly one you bought at that farmer's market, with the chipped handle. Yara blinked. That thing cost $3. I know. I threw away everything else when you left. All the reminders. But I kept that mug in the back of the cabinet. Used it every morning. He looked down at their joined hands. Told myself it was just convenient. That it didn't mean anything. Her eyes softened. Dante, I never stopped missing you, he continued, the words coming easier now. I buried it, pretended the Empire was enough. But every morning, drinking coffee from that stupid mug, I remembered what it felt like to be human, to want something beyond power. Yara leaned her head against his shoulder, careful not to disturb Zara sleeping on the couch. I kept your shirt, the gray one you'd wear on lazy Sundays. It stopped smelling like you after a while, but I couldn't throw it away. They sat in silence, 3 babies breathing softly around them, the city lights painting patterns on the walls. This wasn't the life either of them had imagined. It was messier, more complicated, infinitely more dangerous. But it was real. 1 month, Dante said softly. That's what my father gave me, to prove they're worth protecting. And then we fight for them. Together, whatever it takes. Yara lifted her head, meeting his eyes. I'm not going anywhere this time, no matter who tries to make me. Good, Dante said, because I'm not letting you go again. Not for my father, not for the Empire, not for anything. Outside, the city breathed its usual chaos. Sirens, traffic, the pulse of millions of lives intersecting. Inside, 3 children slept, unaware that they held the future of a criminal dynasty in their small, gifted hands. And 2 people who'd been torn apart slowly learned to build something new. Not a kingdom. Not an empire. Just a family, fragile, dangerous, impossibly precious, worth everything. 3 weeks into their new reality, Dante's uncle made his move. It started subtly. Questions at family meetings about the triplets' development. Suggestions that proper assessment would help prepare them for their eventual role in the organization. Offers to introduce specialists who understood unique abilities. Dante deflected each attempt, his refusals polite but absolute. Yara stayed away from family gatherings entirely, a protective distance that his relatives noted with barely concealed disdain. Then the specialists appeared anyway. Dante came home from a meeting with the East Coast distributors to find 2 strangers in his penthouse, a man and woman in clinical white coats, standing near the nursery while Yara blocked their path like a human wall. What's happening? Dante's voice was dangerously quiet. His head of security, Marcus, the one man he trusted completely, stepped forward, jaw tight. They arrived 20 minutes ago. Said they had your authorization. I called to verify, but we have authorization from the Kim family patriarch. The male specialist interrupted smoothly. He was in his 50s, gray-haired, with the practiced calm of someone used to dealing with volatile situations. We're here to conduct preliminary assessments of the children's abilities. Standard protocol for gifted bloodlines. There is no standard protocol, Yara said sharply, because they're 3 months old, and no one touches them without both parents' consent. The female specialist smiled condescendingly. Ms. Okonkwo, we understand this is overwhelming for someone outside the organization, but these children carry valuable genetic markers. Early assessment ensures proper development. Get out, Dante said. Both specialists turned to him. Mr. Kim, your father? My father doesn't make decisions about my children. Dante moved to stand beside Yara, a united front. You have 10 seconds to leave before my security escorts you out less gently. The male specialist's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. These abilities need structure, guidance. Without proper training, the children could become dangerous. To themselves, to others. They're babies, Yara said incredulously. Not weapons. Everything is a weapon, the woman replied, when you don't control it. The girl's electrical manipulation. What happens when she throws a tantrum in a hospital? The boy's telekinesis. What if he accidentally hurts someone? These aren't theoretical concerns, Ms. Okonkwo. They're documented risks. Dante's hand moved to his phone. One text to Marcus, and these people would disappear into the kind of black hole his family specialized in. But Yara's hand on his arm stopped him. We'll handle this properly, she said quietly, then louder. You have 5 seconds. 4. 3. They left, but not before the male specialist handed Dante a card. When you're ready to be reasonable, call this number. Your father wants what's best for his grandchildren. Whether you believe that or not. The door closed. Silence fell, broken only by small sounds from the nursery, Marcus blowing bubbles in his sleep, Elijah's small fist hitting the mobile above his crib, Zara's contented breathing. He sent them, Dante said flatly. My father. Testing boundaries. What do we do? Yara asked, already moving to check on the triplets. Dante looked at the card in his hand, then at the woman who'd fought off strangers trying to assess their children like lab specimens. She was shaking slightly. Adrenaline, fear, rage all mixing together. But she hadn't backed down, hadn't let them near the babies. She was a warrior, and she'd chosen to fight beside him. We accelerate the timeline, Dante said, decision crystallizing. My father gave us a month. We're 3 weeks in. It's time to have the final conversation. What if he doesn't accept your terms? Then we disappear. Dante said it so simply, so absolutely, that Yara froze. I have resources my family doesn't know about. Safe houses. Offshore accounts under different names. We take the children somewhere they'll never be found, and we start over. You'd walk away from everything? Yara's voice was barely a whisper. Your empire, your legacy, all of it? Dante crossed to the nursery. looking down at 3 sleeping children who'd rewritten his entire existence. Zara's small hand curled around the edge of her blanket. Marcus's face was peaceful, innocent. Elijah's chest rose and fell with perfect trust that the world would keep him safe. "This is my legacy," Dante said quietly. "Not the empire, not the family name. Them, you, this." He turned to Yara. "I chose wrong 3 years ago. Let my father convince me that power mattered more than love. I lost everything that made me human." His voice roughened. "I won't make that mistake again. If it comes down to the organization or this family, there's no choice. There was never a choice." Yara moved to him, her hand finding his. "If we run, they'll hunt us. Your father doesn't forgive betrayal. Then we'll be ready." Dante's fingers laced through hers. "I've been preparing for this possibility since the moment you walked back into my life. Money, documents, allies outside the organization. We can vanish completely if we need to. And if we don't need to, if your father accepts the terms, then we build something different here. A life where our children aren't weapons or assets, where they can choose their own path." Dante's jaw tightened. "But we do it with clear boundaries. No more surprise specialists. No more tests. They grow up protected, loved, and free from the worst of what this world offers." It was an impossible dream. A crime lord trying to shield his children from the empire he'd helped build. But as Dante looked at Yara, at this woman who'd survived being erased, who'd come back stronger, who'd never stopped fighting, he believed it might be possible. "When do we talk to your father?" Yara asked. "Tomorrow, at the estate. You and me, together." Dante squeezed her hand. "He needs to see we're united, that this isn't negotiable. He'll try to separate us, find weakness. He won't find any." Dante turned to face her fully. 3 years ago, I let him convince me you were the wrong choice, that loving you made me weak." He lifted her hand to his lips, the gesture ancient and reverent. "But you're not my weakness, Yara. You're the only thing that makes me strong enough to stand against him." Her eyes shimmered. "We're really doing this, taking on your entire family." "We're protecting ours," Dante corrected. "Everything else is just noise." That night, they prepared. Dante reviewed financial documents, confirmed safe house locations, verified that their escape plan had no holes. Yara packed emergency bags, clothes, supplies, everything 3 infants would need to disappear at a moment's notice. It felt like preparing for war. Maybe it was. But as Dante watched Yara sing softly to the triplets, her voice weaving a lullaby in her native language, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Certainty. Not the cold calculation of business decisions, but the bone-deep knowledge that he was exactly where he needed to be, fighting for exactly what mattered. His phone buzzed. A message from his father. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Don't be late." Dante typed back. "We'll be there. Both of us." A long pause. Then, "This should be interesting." Interesting. That was one word for it. Dante had others. Terrifying, necessary, potentially catastrophic. But as Zara's small hand gripped his finger, her storm-gray eyes opening to stare at him with that unsettling awareness, he knew there was no other path. Only forward. Only together. Tomorrow he would face his father as an equal, not a subordinate. Tomorrow he would draw a line that couldn't be crossed. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tonight, he held his daughter and let himself believe in impossible things. Like love surviving in the underworld. Like family built on more than blood and violence. Like a crime lord learning to be a father first. The city lights flickered outside, indifferent to the small revolution happening in this penthouse. But inside, 3 children breathed, 2 adults prepared, and the future waited. Uncertain, dangerous, and worth every risk. The Kim family estate looked exactly as Dante remembered, pristine, powerful, and hollow. Yara stood beside him at the front entrance, wearing a simple dress that somehow made her look regal. She'd refused his offer of designer clothes, choosing instead something comfortable, practical. "I'm not here to impress anyone," she'd said. "I'm here to protect our children." And she looked like a queen preparing for battle. Dante's father waited in the main study, seated in the leather chair that had witnessed decades of brutal decisions. His uncle flanked him on one side, 2 cousins on the other. A show of force, a reminder of where power resided. But Dante had brought his own reminder. On his phone, custody documents already filed with 3 different law firms, trust funds established in the triplets' names, managed by independent trustees, recordings of conversations, financial trails, evidence carefully compiled over years, insurance against exactly this moment. "You brought her," his father said, not rising, bold. "I brought my children's mother," Dante corrected. "We're here to discuss terms." "Terms?" His uncle laughed shortly. "You don't dictate terms to this family, nephew." Yara's hand found Dante's, a subtle show of unity. Her voice was calm when she spoke. "With respect, we're not here to dictate. We're here to establish boundaries, for everyone's benefit." His father's gaze fixed on her, calculating. "You've become articulate, Ms. Okonkwo. 3 years ago you ran when faced with pressure. What's changed?" "I have 3 reasons to be stronger now," Yara said simply. "And I'm not running from anyone. Not anymore." The room's temperature seemed to drop. Dante's father leaned forward slightly. "The specialists reported that you refused assessment. That you're keeping my grandchildren isolated, unprepared." "Your grandchildren are 3 months old," Dante interrupted. "They need parents, not researchers. Love, not protocols. They need protection from themselves," his father countered. "The girl's ability is already manifesting uncontrolled. What happens when she's older, angrier? When a teenage tantrum blacks out a city block? Then we'll teach her control," Yara said. "Through patience, understanding, and family support. Not clinical assessment and early conditioning." His father's jaw tightened. "You speak as if you understand our world. You don't. Gifts like theirs attract attention. Enemies, governments. Without proper preparation, they become targets." "They're already targets," Dante said quietly. "Because they're my children. Because they carry this family's blood. That won't change whether they're trained as weapons or raised as people." "So what's your solution?" his uncle demanded. "Hide them? Pretend they're normal?" "That's not realistic." Dante pulled out his phone, pulling up documents. "Here's what's realistic. I maintain my role in the organization. Handle operations, negotiations, everything I've always done. But I live separately with Yara and the children. No family interference in parenting decisions. No surprise specialists. No attempts to weaponize their abilities." "In exchange for what?" his father asked. "In exchange for your grandchildren knowing you," Dante said. "For them learning about their heritage on their own timeline. For this family having a future beyond violence and control." His father stood, moving to the window. Outside, manicured gardens stretched toward the horizon, beautiful and empty. "You're asking me to trust her," he said without turning. "The woman I removed from your life once already. You're asking us to trust you," Yara countered. "The man who erased me, froze my accounts, and threatened my existence. Trust has to go both ways." The silence stretched. Dante could feel his uncle's hostility, his cousin's skepticism. But his father was actually considering it. "The children's safety is paramount," his father finally said. "If I agree to these terms, I want regular updates. Proof that they're developing properly, that their abilities are being managed." "Understood," Dante said. "Monthly calls, photos, updates on milestones. But no interference unless we ask for help. And if they want to join the organization when they're older, if they choose that path, knowing all their options, we won't stop them," Yara said carefully. "But they deserve the choice. Not pressure, not manipulation. Real choice." His father turned, studying them both. "You've thought this through." "We've thought about nothing else for 3 weeks," Dante admitted. This is the only way forward that protects everyone. The children get a childhood. You get grandchildren who might actually want to know you. And he squeezed Yara's hand. I get to be more than what you made me. And if I refuse these terms? Dante met his father's eyes without flinching. Then we disappear. Completely. You'll never find us. Never see them again. I have resources you don't know about, Father. Enough to vanish forever. It was the nuclear option. The line in the sand. His father's face showed nothing, but Dante caught the slight tension in his jaw, the tell he'd learned to read decades ago. His father was actually weighing the options, calculating costs. You'd give up everything, his father said quietly. Your position, your inheritance, the empire. For them. Dante looked at Yara, then back to his father. Without hesitation. The room held its breath. His uncle started to speak, but his father raised one hand, silencing him. For a long moment, the patriarch of the Kim family simply stared at his son. The heir he'd molded, the weapon he'd sharpened, the legacy he'd built. Then, impossibly, his father's expression softened. Just a fraction. You remind me of your mother, he said quietly. Before this life hardened her. Before she learned that love was a liability. Dante blinked, thrown. His mother had died when he was young. Cancer, officially, though he'd always suspected the stress of this life had killed her faster than any disease. She wanted me to choose differently, his father continued, moving back to his desk. To build something beyond violence. I told her it was impossible, that men like us don't get soft endings. He sat down heavily. Maybe I was wrong. Father, 1 year, his father interrupted. You have 1 year to prove this arrangement works. That you can balance family and organization. That those children can be raised safely while staying connected to their heritage. His gaze fixed on Yara. And you protect them fiercely. I respect that. But if you ever try to turn them against this family, against their blood, that respect ends. Understood? Yara lifted her chin. I won't turn them against anyone. But I won't let anyone turn them into something they're not. They get to decide who they become. His father nodded slowly. Fair enough. He pulled out formal documents, contracts, apparently prepared in advance. These outline the terms: separate residence, no interference, monthly updates, financial support for the children, and, he looked at Dante, continued active role in operations. Your expertise is too valuable to lose. Dante scanned the documents. They were surprisingly reasonable, almost generous. You had these prepared already, he said, realization dawning. You knew I'd fight for this. I raised you to be strong, his father said simply, to value what matters. I just never expected what mattered to you would be so. He gestured vaguely. Human. It wasn't quite approval, but it wasn't rejection either. Dante signed. Yara signed. His father witnessed, making it official. Just like that, the impossible became real. A crime lord and his family, protected by the very empire that had tried to destroy them. As they prepared to leave, his father called out, Dante. He turned. His father stood, looking older somehow, tired. Bring them by. Next month. I'd like to meet my grandchildren properly, not as assets, as family. Dante felt something crack in his chest. Surprise, relief, cautious hope. We will. The drive back to the city was quiet. Yara's hand stayed in his, solid and real. They'd done it, negotiated safety, bought time, created space for their children to grow up loved instead of weaponized. Do you trust him? Yara finally asked. No, Dante said honestly, but I trust that he values legacy. And those children are his legacy now, whether he planned it or not. And if he breaks the agreement? Then we activate Plan B. Dante glanced at her. Passports are ready. Money's transferred. We can be in another country within 6 hours if needed. Yara smiled slightly. Always prepared. Always, Dante confirmed. But for the first time in my life, I'm hoping the preparation isn't necessary. They arrived home to find the triplets awake and fussy, the nanny looking exhausted. Dante scooped up Marcus while Yara took Elijah, and they moved through the familiar rhythm of feeding, changing, soothing. Zara watched from her swing, her storm-gray eyes tracking movements, the lights dimming and brightening with her mood. This was their life now. Negotiations and night feedings, empire management and diaper changes, power plays and lullabies. It shouldn't work. By all logic, a crime lord couldn't be a present father. A woman erased by his family shouldn't trust him. 3 gifted children shouldn't thrive in the shadow of violence. But logic had never accounted for love. Later, after the triplets finally slept, Dante found Yara on the balcony, staring at the city lights. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, feeling her lean back into him. "We did it," she whispered. "We did," he confirmed. 1 year to prove it works. And after that, we keep fighting, keep protecting, keep building this impossible thing we've made." Dante kissed her temple. Together. The city sprawled below them, millions of lives intersecting, unaware of the small revolution happening in this penthouse, unaware that a man who'd built his power on fear had learned something stronger, the terrifying, beautiful courage of loving completely. Inside, 3 children slept, 3 impossible futures, 3 reasons to believe in redemption, and 2 people who'd been torn apart slowly rebuilt themselves into something new. Not perfect, not safe, but real. Worth everything. Worth the empire he'd risked. Worth the life they'd fight to protect. The crime lord who'd had everything finally understood what mattered. This. Them. Love that refused to die despite every attempt to kill it. And in the quiet of the night, holding the woman he'd never stopped loving, Dante Kim let himself believe in happy endings. Even for men like him. Especially for children like theirs. The future was uncertain, dangerous, but it was theirs. And that was enough. End of episode Era 1. Next episode, Gifts and Shadows. As the triplets grow, their abilities intensify, and enemies emerge who see them not as children, but as weapons to be claimed.